Zimbabwean economy. You go out for dinner and they give you on the menu, jumbo shrimp. Well, is it a shrimp or is it jumbo? And my worst, these reality TV shows. Now, virtual reality, there's nothing real about it. They're walking around with these things, microphones, cameras. So Kardashians, no. Okay, I think I've answered all the things that people were asking. Let's have a look at the homework. Homework, a great example, of course, of a compound. Home is one thing, work is one thing. You put them together and it's something different. That's what a compound's about. So let's start. Who would like to tell me about mob? Don't be shy.
The shortened version of the full word?
Yes, which is? Okay, who found what it is short for? Mobile vulgus. Mobile vulgus, which means the moving or the excitable crowd. We talk about our mobile phone. Mobile, mobile. It's moving. You take it around with you. It's a great name for a phone that is a cellular thing that stands alone. So mobile vulgus, the excitable crowd, and it just became too much of a phrase to carry around. So they clipped off the vulgus, then they clipped off the ile. So we accept in the dictionary the word mob, but when you looked at the etymology, Mainframe, what would you say mainframe is? Compound, yes. So again, a word that's been created because of technology. We talk about mainframe computers, that you need names, labels for all these things. Nicotine. Okay, who's going to offer? Yes. Who said yes, eponym?
Yeah, well, originally Nicotiana, which was Portuguese, Was it French or Portuguese? Can't remember. French. But back to hence botanical, because Jean Nicot in the 16th century, he was the ambassador to Portugal, and he sent these little seeds off back to France.
You naughty fella. Naughty fella. Okay. On the basis that this was just something lovely new, and they're not realizing the sort of harmful things that this oily substance had. Jean Nicot, Portuguese ambassador French ambassador to Portugal, and he introduced this substance. The Nicotiana you're talking about is the genus. When we talk a little bit later about Carl von Linné, we'll talk about that. That's the grouping, the genus. ADHD, let's see. Initialism. Okay, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. Okay. NASA, meaning she loves stars and things. NASA, National Aeronautic and Space Administration. That's it. Agency. I should know that. My stepson works there. Oh my. Mea culpa. UCT. Initialism. We don't say acte, we say UCT. Initialism. CIA. Yes, also initialism. Central Intelligence Agency. Goodbye. God be with you. Correct. It is a blend. You look originally, it's God be with ye. And it's blended, a little bit of corruption over time, but it is a nice thing to say to somebody. God be with you. Rugby. I can see there must be some rugby fans here. Definitely. Rugby. Who's going to tell me about rugby? Toponym, correct. We didn't get to toponyms yesterday. We're going to look at them today. But it's the name of a place. Where's the place? England. It's a school in England where that game was first evolved. Okay. Bowdlerise. Where's my Shakespearean lady who just is? She sees Shakespeare as. Where are you? Well, you're all Shakespearean. You love Shakespeare, don't you? Eponym named after Thomas Baudelaire. Why? Why?
Because he thought it wasn't nice for families to read.
Correct. So, what does it mean to Baudelairize something? To expurgate, to take out what they consider offensive pieces. But of course, what was left when he'd watered down Shakespeare was not acceptable at all. Okay. Alrighty. So we can carry on. We looked yesterday at eponyms. George Bush. Oh, gentleman told me an hilarious thing now this morning about another Bushism. He said, okay, I hope I've got it right. I can't see. Hand up, the gentleman. Okay. He said his aides came to George Bush and said there's been a terrible earthquake in South America. And so many Brazilians were lost. And George Bush said, how much is a Brazilian? Okay. All right. So let's have a look first at chauvinism. I'm looking at boycott first, okay? Maybe I've missed out. Where's old Chauvin? Let's look at Chauvin first, Nicholas. Go back again. Where is he? He came first, so maybe I didn't put him. No. I put him first. So let's talk about chauvinism, even if he's not on my PowerPoint. Never mind. Who would like to offer a little bit about this word that we hear bandied around so much? We talk about male chauvinist and so on. Where did this come from? What is it? What did it originally mean? Which it can still mean today. You're all too shy. You are right. Yes. Napoleon's era.
And he travelled a lot to England from France. Was he an ambassador or something?
No. Oh, no.
He was a soldier and he was super patriotic. Only France could do anything.
God, it sounds familiar. Yes, exactly. So Nicolas Chauvin was a veteran of the Napoleonic army. He was badly wounded during that war, but he was absolutely crazily in love with Napoleon. Even when Napoleon abdicated, no, this is his guy. And so it came to mean excessive patriotism, but to a ridiculous extent that there was even a play that was written about him, mocking him really for that. So we don't tend to use it so much in that sense now. We use it in male chauvinism. What does male chauvinism mean? I like the way you think the male's always wrong. I heard wrong, didn't I? The male's always wrong? Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. Male chauvinism, about the male beliefs for some people that in the superiority of males over females. And where it evolved was from, of course, Nicolas Chauvin, who was so excessively patriotic, believed his country, France, France for the French only, and that sort of thing. After the war, when the men who'd gone to war came back, they expected that actually they could just get their jobs back. They'd left their jobs. But what had happened in the meantime was the women had actually gone into those jobs. Women even learned to be car mechanics, all sorts of things. And so when they came back, they were rather peeved that the women could do what they could do. That's the one very favorable, sort of common explanation. The other one says that actually when they came back, the women relinquished their positions reluctantly, and the men came back and became the boss once again, and they were secretaries and answering and blah, 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 blah. So it's developed this idea, the men wanting their position back. And that came in, although it came in post-World War, it was accepted in the dictionary in 1952. Okay, so somewhat after, but we know it takes some time for words to come into the dictionary.
Could it not be defined as the opposite of female chauvinism?
Well, in fact, there is female chauvinism as well. Obviously, I wanted to protect us ladies about that. But there is in the dictionary as well, there's female chauvinism. So same story, okay? Excessive belief in one's superiority. Yes, David?
Is there a female version of misogyny? Women that hate men?
Yes, misandrist. A misandrist, so misogynist is from misos, meaning hatred or intense dislike. Gyne or gune is woman, so an intense dislike of women. So there is the opposite, misos, with aner andros. Andros is a male, so somebody who intensely dislikes males. Okay, yeah. So let's look at, what did you find about boycott? We know what it means to refuse to have dealings with either commercially or socially, but where does it come from? Yes.
Captain Boycott, son in era in potato famines middle of the 19th century, refused to help his people at all, and in the end they refused to work for him.
Correct. That's absolutely succinct. Captain Charles Boycott was a land agent, not the owner of the land, but when the land reforms were being instituted, he refused to abide by these land reforms that said you have to lower the rents for your tenant farmers. He said, no way, I'm not going to do that. No. So they simply banded together, the tenant farmers, and said, well, we're not going to give you the milk, the bread, the blah, 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 blah. And they boycotted him. They ostracized him. And so we've coined that name that word for a long, long time. I mean, it's a word, everyday word we understand, but it actually comes from an historical and true thing. There he is. Here he is. And look how we're still using it today. Gerrymander. Okay, gerrymander, I've given you here what it really is. Gerrymander comes from Governor Elbridge Gerry, who was a politician who wanted people to vote for him. So he needed to manipulate his electoral boundaries. And if you look at how he manipulated these in the state of Massachusetts, look at that. Looks like this big creature, the salamander-type lizard. I mean, he should have just had one area. He said, no, but I know that they like me over there, and they like me over there, and they like... So he just manipulated. And that's against the law. I know even political powers that be still try to do that. Yes?
It's not against the law.
Is it not?
The congressional district I live in Michigan, is shaped like this.
Wow.
It's far more convoluted than that. It's
Wow.
perfectly legal, and it's annoying.
It is annoying. I'm just thinking, I thought it's certainly against the law here. I don't know. Maybe it's not against the law, but because there was at one stage, there was talk of the ANC trying to manipulate our Western Cape boundaries and so on. So I'll check on that, but thank you for that. So it's still, gee whiz, that's horrible, eh? Whoa.
It takes place every 10 years following the consensus in the United States, because that tells you how many people are in each part in some detail. And whichever political party is in power at that time then takes a look at whether the districts need to be updated based on the latest census data. Wow. It's still quite reasonable until I actually do it.
Yeah, but that gives incredible power, doesn't it? Wow. Wow. No, I think it should be outlawed. That's what I think. All right. Pyrrhic victory. Back to ancient times. Anybody going to offer something about Pyrrhic victory? You all know what it is. A Pyrrhic victory where you lose as much as you gain. It's not really a victory at all. Anybody? History? Okay. Pyrrhus was a Greek mercenary who was brought in to fight against the Romans at the Battle of Asculum in 279 BCE. And after he surveyed the dead and the dying, he said, one more such victory and we are undone. He had lost as many men as the Romans had lost. So although technically the Romans retreated what was left of their side, so they were the conquered, we didn't really win much at all. Just an example of how it's used today. This was in the newspaper just a little while ago. Brexit time, a Pyrrhic victory. Boris Johnson wakes up to the costs of Brexit. A Pyrrhic victory. Great sort of, have you won as much as you thought? Have you lost? Or, blah, blah. Okay. And by the way, I didn't bring up that Brexit is a great example, of course, of a blend. British exit. And what we see in the dictionary now, of course, that's accepted, but also one of the contenders for word of the year this year was, end of last year, was Brexiteer. So that's how it's really exploding, people understanding. They didn't think of it first, eh? They stole it from the Greeks. The Greeks put a hypothetical idea of Grexit. And then they, that's nice, Grexit. So then we'll make it Brexit. But Brexit has taken traction, whereas Grexit is not really as common to see anymore. The other thing I wanted to talk about, somebody mentioned to me, that you didn't mention this yesterday when you talked about acronyms. A very a good acronym as an example of where you take the first sounds of a series of words, not just the first letter, the first sounds would be Soweto. Soweto is Southwestern Township. So that is an acronym. Academe, here we are in the academy, in academic life. So I'll tell the little story so we can get on now. This is after Plato, who founded the so-called first university in the first academy, the Academy of Athens. But it all started when he invited the young men who were obviously learners because the boys went to school. He invited them to meet him in the Grove of Academus, which is like a park, a big open space. And come and let's chat about things that are educational. And that would be, of course, they were very polymathic people. They knew astronomy and mathematics and philosophy. And from there, he created his academy, and he was permitted to build on this area just outside Athens. But it lends us to the notion, or makes us understand, why we talk about a campus being a place where academic buildings and academic stuff goes on. This is UCT campus, where when you look at the etymology of campus, it means open field. So how has it come? It's a word that has specialized in meaning because we've got this notion of the academy that Plato started, the academy that was in the open air. There we are. He's sitting having a little chat with his scholar. Draconian. Who would like to offer that? We're still back in ancient Greece. Anybody? Yes.
Magistrate in Athens, Dracon.
Yes. And what did he do?
Applied the law extremely severely.
Correct. It means very severe, extremely severe, and it comes from the history of Draco, who was a magistrate in ancient Athens, and he was tasked with writing the laws down. Up until then, everything was orally. So there was no, this law is written down and you must follow it. So, oral is going to be open to fluidity. But what he did at the same time is he gave the punishments. If you break that law, he put down the punishments. And they were so severe that it was said his laws were written in blood, not ink. 1 century later, Solon repealed all of those laws except for the laws on homicide and the punishments on homicide. Yes. Complied. Oh, yes. Another mea culpa. I mean, what's going on with me? Yeah, right. Mea culpa in Latin meaning my fault, my mistake, so my apology. Compiled. Yes. So let's go to toponyms. Now we are moving on. You had one toponym, rugby, for your little bit of stuff at home. Topos meaning place. The onyma is coming again. You will see that onyma in synonyms, antonyms, pseudonyms. It's that onyma, okay, word attached to various other roots. So names of places. First of all, Champagne. We know that Champagne is not allowed to be called Champagne unless it comes from that region and the grapes that are grown there. Otherwise, you've got to have Cap Method Classique, as we have here in Cape Town. Still done according to that method, but you may not call it that. As I mentioned the other day, Rooibos is our kind of... we keep that. It's not a toponym, but we're not allowed, no one else is allowed to call that particular tea Rooibos unless it's grown here. Denim, the ubiquitous denims. We all have denims, that hardy material. And this comes from de Nîmes. From Nîmes in France was the first place that this material was sourced. And, of course, it was Levi Strauss who sourced this material and made his actual Levi's denims. Jeans also. We're talking about jeans is from Genoa. So the same thing with the materials, the hardy material. Hamburger, well, there's no ham in hamburger at all. And hamburger is coming from Hamburg in Germany, referring to the notion that we talked about also a while ago, that when people emigrate, they like to take with them things that they're familiar with. They take with them their recipes, their foodstuffs. They take with them their clothing that they're comfortable with, So when there was a great German emigration and immigrating into America, they took with them this foodstuff which had no rolls, no, you didn't put a bread roll. It was just minced beef. Okay, they'd minced it, and that was what it was. But when they got to America, the Americans said, "This is very nice." So they then slapped it between the top and bottom of a bun, and so it became the hamburger with bread, but was not starting like that. Then it was also in America that they thought, well, this is fab. We won't just say it's a hamburger. I'm going to have a cheeseburger. I'm going to have a mushroom burger, which then makes me just remember as we go a bit forward to something else, burger now never started as a word on its own. It was from Hamburg, and if you were a hamburger, you were a person from Hamburg. All right. So this English does this. English is so creative. It's fantastic. It's unbelievable. So English took this burger, okay, and the Americans and said mushroom burger, cheeseburger, blah, blah, blah. And we're going to see that happening again in a few words that come up just now. We're looking at Bedlam referring to the asylum in London, which is, so when we say something is Bedlam, God, it's a mess, it's chaotic in here, you know. So it's, you know, referring to the rather chaotic, sad situation in that asylum. An asylum it's got a pejorative sort of sense to us, but it should not be. In Greek, it means a place of refuge. So that's a much nicer thing to say, isn't it? Okay, Sybarite. Anybody want to offer Sybarite?
Excessive greed.
Yeah, excessive, yeah, well, luxury. A lover, a person devoted to luxury and excess. So, yeah, maybe greed in that as well is implied. This is coming from Sybaris, where there was, in Italy, where there was a Greek colony that was founded there, and they were the rich. It's almost like saying, okay, here I am, South African, and I'm just going to go to my holiday home in Malta. Or I'm going to my place down in Plettenberg Bay, or maybe in Italy, or in, so it's for the people that those colonists were wealthy, and they lived this wealthy lifestyle, and so a Sybarite is a hedonist, really. Okay. Somebody who's devoted to luxury, excess, a hedonist. Okay, hedonist. Okay. So now, we've just looked at burger, the ending. Now we're looking at marathon. I'm sure that some of you have run marathons or half marathons or ultra marathons. Marathon. This is actually a toponym. It is not the name of a race, it's the name of a place, okay? The plain of Marathon, the campus, that's plain, open area, of Marathon, was the site of a battle between the Persians who were invading and the Greeks. This plain was 26 miles outside Athens, or just under 26 miles outside Athens. And the Greeks were having a tough time, absolutely terrible time. So the leader of the Greeks calls upon the Olympic champion, whose name was Phidippides. Now, in the ancient Olympics, there was no marathon distance. The longest distance that the athletes ran, 10,000 meters, so 10 Ks. But he calls on Phidippides. He says, listen, Phidippides, you've got to run to Sparta and get help for us. So he runs all the way. He says, okay, boss, I'll do that. And geez, off he goes. And Sparta's a long way away. Sparta was something like 240 miles away. Phew, it took him about 5 days to get there. He gets there. He says, look, we need your help. It's terrible, terrible. Need your help. They said, look, so sorry. We're religious holiday at the moment. We can't. It's like asking somebody to help during Eid or Christmas or Easter or something. Can't do it. He runs back. He's like doing back-to-back these comrades marathons. Gets back there. And the leader says, thank you so much, Phidippides. But we've won. Look, the Persians are retreating. So would you just go to Athens? Only 26 miles now. Just announce the victory. He says, okay. He sets out, and the story goes that he announces, we have won, we are victorious, and he dropped down dead. That was it. So we don't want any people running these races dropping down dead. So marathon, when the modern Olympic Games were introduced by Baron Pierre de Coubertin in 1896, When that was introduced, he, first of all, started it in Athens, which was so appropriate, wasn't it? Wonderful, because it's, marathons, Greek, fabulous. And he introduced the marathon as we understand it, which was 42 kilometers. But how long is a marathon? 42.2. Rightio. So where did this 0.2 come in the modern marathon? So if you're going to do a half marathon, it's 21.1, not just 20, 21.1. So, okay, so we look at this now. Why the 42.2? In 1908, the Olympic Games took place in Britain. So, in order to honor the king, the Olympic Committee decided that the marathon, instead of starting in the stadium and running out and coming back, in Athens it was lovely because they ran out to the plain of Marathon, or they started in the plain of Marathon and came back. But, okay, they're not going to do that. They're going to honor the king, and so they started the marathon in front of Windsor Castle, and they ended it in front of the Royal Box. That added 200 meters. So those poor guys, I don't know what happens to the record, but anyway. So it added 200 meters, and that was 1908. That was a special thing for the king. They dropped it after that. But for some reason, they decided, nah, it's quite nice, that distance. So 1924, they brought it back, and it's remained forever and ever. So anything that is beyond 42.2 is going to be an ultra-marathon, meaning beyond that marathon. Oh, wait, I wanted to just say, just before we look at this one, I wanted to say, so when we look at thon, marathon is the name of a place, like Hamburg was the name of the place, okay? Now you talk about anything that takes a long time and a lot of energy, etc. Readathon, to raise money. A dance-a-thon. You see? I saw something the other day, hackathon. God, I don't know what they were doing there. Hacking into people's computers, quite terrible. So then we're looking at the same principle where we are taking a suffix and we're actually using it with a meaning attached that of the original. Marathon, long and da-da-da, and now everything with a thon. Okay, but you can't look up in the dictionary thon. You can look up thong, can't look up thon. So then we look at this. Watergate. What did Watergate? Now Watergate was the name of the building where all of this hullabaloo went on, okay. So it was Watergate. Any political shenanigans, scandal going on now is going to be Nkandlagate, Guptagate. It just means political scandal. So we've taken again something, it was nothing to do with a gate, it was just the end of the name of a building. Then we'll look very briefly at affixation. When we tomorrow look at creating words from Latin and Greek roots, you will see that this is a very, very big well to create words, where we will use prefixes and we will use suffixes. And what this does is the prefix that we use will alter the meaning of a basic root. The suffix will give it the English look. A suffix, the ending, anglicizes a word. So let me see. A prefix will change the meaning. I'll give you a couple of examples in a minute. Okay? Whether it's of Germanic or Latin or Greek, that's the job of a prefix. I can say there is a trial and there's a mistrial. He's a man and it's Superman. So can you attach it to words of Germanic origin as well? But it is hugely used in words of Latin and Greek origin. Suffixes are going to change the grammatical function. So I'll give you a couple of examples. There's my mistrial. This is unheard of. My child's at preschool. Superman. My ex-boyfriend. Extra special, ultra-modern. Just by the by, this would be, you're going to have your Latin, your Latin, your Latin, your Latin, your Latin. Misos would be the Greek. But using these, the un is the Anglo-Saxon negative. But let's look at words now. An example. So, progression. Okay? I would say, when you look up the etymology of the gres part, it comes from gradi, gressus, is to go. Okay. Pro, you will see, is forward. The eon gives me a noun. So I can take this and I can say regression. I can say congress. I can say digress. I can say digression. I can say digressing. I can say, you can think of millions. So you see how many from that root, we can just create so many. Doesn't matter that it comes from that one word, gress, meaning go. I can change the meaning, and it's fabulous. So there we go. We look at this. There's your prefix, there's your root, and there's your noun suffix. But I can take that noun suffix off and I can put a participle, I can put a verb, I can put anything. Alrighty, so tomorrow we'll be looking at words themselves from Latin and Greek roots, and we'll see how they are created. But we can't leave this here yet. Before we look at the notion that language is dynamic, it is powerful, it is always evolving, it depends on the people who speak it, how it's going to change. Language does not stay the same. You've noticed this already in the course. So this is what David Crystal says. To study language without reference to change is to place it in a social vacuum. Language cannot exist without people. To study language change is to study people change. The only ones that do not change are the dead ones. Well, of course, I do feel a bit offended when he calls Latin and Greek dead. They're not really dead because they're alive and well and living in wizardry of words and word power, etc. But what he means is the no longer spoken languages, such as our Latin and our Greek, have got boundaries. They have lexical boundaries. They don't change. That is how it is. But other languages, living languages, are going to evolve and change. So, modern Greek is, but the ancient Greek has got its boundaries, yeah. For example, things don't always stay the same. Things can change and look very different from how they started. So let's look first at the word silly. The semantics means meaning. The semantic development is the development of the meaning. How has this word changed? When we look all the way back to the Old English meaning, selig meant blessed, happy. Oh, there you go. Oh, Middle English, seli, it becomes innocent. So if you're this happy person, oh, it's like an innocent child. It's lovely. Then we go to modern English, the notion of silly being deserving of compassion. Okay? Weak, feeble. If you're deserving compassion, maybe not on your game so much, maybe. Simple, ignorant. Feeble-minded, foolish, empty-headed. So that, starting from a positive sense, has now got a negative sense. All right? That is called degeneration of meaning. So we start with degeneration of meaning, going down in the type of meaning. It's got a special fancy name, which is very nice, called perjuration. It's not perjuration. There's no R in there. It's not about lying, okay? This word, perjuration, comes from the Latin P-E-I-O-R, peior, meaning worse. In Latin, just for those who are interested, you may say, well, what is she talking about? I see a J over there. In Latin, there was no J, the I doubled over as a consonant and the vowel. So when you look at the word like judicial with a J, when you look at the etymology, it comes from I-U-D-I-C as the root. Okay, so the J doubles over. So perjuration is making something worse. Let's have a look at some examples here. We've got officious. You don't want to be described as being officious. Yet, it had a very nice, neutral meaning originally. Today, it means asserting authority in a domineering way. It's really irritating. But it was from the Latin officium, meaning duty. You were dutiful if you were officious. That's a nice thing to be dutiful. But over time, usage, the way people use it in the context they use it, has given this pejorative sense. Egregious. It now means shockingly bad. Oh, well, you see, I did that, didn't I? I made an egregious error. I said, complied instead of compiled. Egregious. It used to mean excellent, standing out of the flock. Grex gregis is a flock. The e means out of. So it meant amazingly good, outstanding. So it was positive. It is now only negative. How do you feel about this symbol? Not good, eh? Not good at all. The swastika. Swastika. Look at the difference. This is called the hooked cross. Can you see the distinction? This is the symbol still used today by Buddhists, Hindi, a couple of other groups. It meant svasti, well-being. The swastika, an ancient religious symbol used as a symbol of good luck and used by the Hindu and Buddhist religions now, but with clockwise arms. Of course, today people look at this and they don't like that idea. But I think it is more, of course, this very bold red and the black on the red that, yes.
I've been told that the swastika is a symbol of eternity in Bali.
In Balinese?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Symbol of eternity.
Okay.
Like the running wheel. I'm not sure about that.
So the actual symbol itself, because
Symbol of eternity.
Oh.
Because
it goes around, yeah, it can turn. That's quite interesting. Thank you. Thank you.
It's also known as Buddhist footprints.
Who's talking?
Buddhist footprints.
Buddhist footprints. Oh, wow. So it's really interesting that unfortunately Hitler took this symbol. He changed it slightly, but it's got a very strong pejorative sense. Then, of course, we have the opposite. Elevation of meaning. A word that started either as neutral or maybe meant something not so good can land up actually being something very nice. And so I start with the word nice. We know what we understand when I say nice, okay? So we take the word nice, now meaning pleasant or agreeable. It originally meant stupid, from nescius, meaning not knowing. So let me see here. Just a couple, to give you the kind of how it went from there. So it meant stupid. Nescius in Latin, stupid, right. Not knowing. Then John Gower, the poet, gives an example of this use of foolish in 1390, saying, he can make of a wise man nice. Okay, so drunkenness can make of a wise man nice, not meaning a good guy, stupid. All right, then we go to 14th century. They developed a now obsolete sense of wanton or lascivious. Chaucer provides an illustration. He says, all this I say about Aeneas and Dido and her wanton desire, that loved all too soon a stranger, and in her nice lest, meaning her rather wanton nest, it's supposed to be. In the 15th century, Shakespeare says it's got the meaning of coy, reserved. He says, there is a lady in Milano here whom I affect, but she is nice and coy. Okay, it's reserved, okay. Nicer sense. So it's developing a better sense now, you see. 16th century, Milton uses it. We found nice in the beginning of requiring the idea of precision and delicacy. Then we have the sense, and not until the 18th century, nice came to be employed, meaning pleasing, all right? But this, Noah Webster, the sense was not included. This sense of pleasant was not included in the revision of Noah Webster's dictionary in 1828. He says, of late, a new sense has been introduced, namely pleasing. He said, as a nice girl, nice party, a nice excursion, etc. We even hear it for beautiful. Oh, it's a nice morning, a nice day. This use of the word, though sanctioned by no lexicographer, is extremely common among the English. And if Americans overdo as to fine, they, the British, overdo as to nice. So he had his little dig there. And of course, sometimes it has a kind of a negative, depending on how you use it in slang, saying, "Oh, nice try," you know. And if I cook a dinner or something, and I say to my husband, "So, did you like the new recipe?" And he says, "Yeah, it's nice." What do you mean nice? I want better than nice.
Ultimate precise. A nice point.
Yes. That was the one. There was one there that I mentioned, the idea of precision. That also came through. Yes, you made an exact, nice point.
Gone back to the 15th century when they talked about a nice boy.
Oh, right. Then we look at Chancellor. Here we have our Vice Chancellor is Max Price. The Chancellor of UCT is Grasser Michel. And it's a very high, important position, right? But it was not an important position in that sense. This was a court usher, the keeper of the door at the court, keeping the rabble out, because the kankeli meant the lattice work. So the rabble, or the masses, should I say, could stand outside and look what was going on in the courtroom through the lattice work. They weren't allowed in. And so the cancelarius kept them out. So, yeah, we don't want to tell Max Price, "You're a doorkeeper, eh?" Specialization of meaning. A word shifts from being general to being something very specific. For example, girl. Girl now means the female side of things, a young woman. Originally it was a child of either gender, perhaps from German, gor, meaning child. In Latin you had puella for girl, you had puer for boy. There was no word for child. Just liberi, children, so the liber, the singular form, would be the free one. Okay, but no actual word that said child, there's just a word for children. Campus, there we are, we've talked about that. Now it's the grounds and buildings of academic stuff. We look at computer. Computare meant to, putare is to think, computare to reckon, to calculate. Okay, so the first time this was used as a computer, it's one who is computing, the person who is actually calculating things. And then it became this machine that calculates things, until eventually there's this machine that thinks for you. So it's quite an interesting one, because it's taking the notion of putare, pure root, saying think, and computare, which was added that idea of calculating, mathematical stuff. And we're going to the computer as we understand it can do it all right?
That's why it's called the rekenaar in Afrika.
Called the?
Rekenaar.
Ah, see now. By the way, people, the PowerPoints will be put up by summer school. They'll be put on your, wherever you receive things from them at the end of the course. Okay. All right, generalization of meaning. So if something can become more specific, something can become more general, of course. Let's have a look. To decimate. Decimate, to kill or destroy a large portion of. But for those of you who know Latin, what is embedded in there is the word decem. That's it. Decem means 10, and what it meant in Roman times, a gentleman at the back has told me now, and he's quite correct. If after a battle, the general, the leader, felt that his soldiers had either been cowardly or he felt that there was a mutiny brewing, he could call them all to rank and pick out every 10th man and have him executed. That is quite a sort of thing to stop people doing that in the future. Okay. So it doesn't mean that anymore. It is generalized. So mad cow disease decimated the population, the cow population, cattle population in England some while ago. It really destroyed a large portion. Vaccine. Now we know it's something, you have an injection that provides immunity against disease, but it actually comes from vacca, meaning cow. So we want to say What has that got to do? What's cow got to do with a vaccine? But it's a very interesting story. It is the story of the smallpox epidemic. That there was a country doctor in England, Dr. Edward Jenner, who noticed when the sick people would be coming to him, he couldn't cure the smallpox at all. People were just dying, you know. But he noticed that milkmaids would come to him with blisters on their hands because they'd been milking the cows and they had developed cowpox. And it was not deadly at all. So what he did, very brave, but even braver of the little boy, God, he sucked out the pus from some of these things, blisters, and he injected into a little boy, Edward Phipps, a 9-year-old or whatever he was, to see, would this give him immunity? And in fact it did. So vaccine then was used to prevent smallpox, okay? Comes from the cowpox disease. But now we can say, oh, polio vaccine, a measles vaccine, have you had your vaccination? There's extending that word as well. And we'll end this little section with humour. Oh, what do you think old Noah Webster's going to say about humour? Take out the U. What is it doing there? It's not in humorous, so why is the U there? Anyway, we're keeping the British spelling, humour and humorous. We know that means being kind of amusing. But there was the ancient belief that our bodies are composed of 4 liquids. Humor in Latin just means liquid, all right? I mean, even now, I'm sure that there must be scientists and doctors here. How much? What are we? 76% liquid? What is it? Something like that. Our bodies. Huh? But we've moved on from here. But what they believed is that there were 4 humours, 4 different types of liquids, which, if they were imbalanced, would affect your behaviour. Okay? So we look at the 4 different humours. There was choler, yellow bile, which made, if you had too much yellow bile, you would be bad-tempered. Well, I'm sure you'd be, oh, God, definitely, bad-tempered. Melancholy is black bile, and the ancients believed that the seat of emotion was under your diaphragm, in this area here. So if you had too much black bile there, it's going to make you depressed. Definitely depressed. Sanguis, the good one. Here's the good guy. Sanguis is blood. You know, you flushed, you've been exercising and you're running around, you're full of energy. So if you've got too much of that, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. You have a sanguine temperament. You are confident, you are a cheerful person. Phlegm. Oh. If you have that, you can't move. You just don't want to do anything. So you are unemotional, you have a lot of lassitude, you are weary. So they said that's what their belief was. Now, of course, how do we get to being amusing? Well, if you were one of these, a person who's got too much of this and too much of that, you're acting in a peculiar way. And sometimes people would have said, did you see what he did now? He's obviously going to... So it became something to be laughed at, something that was amusing, from humorous as well. Okay. Do we have any questions before we move on to the next section? Yes?
May I just ask about the word slam? I'm really very tired of hearing on the news every day that so-and-so was slammed for his opinions. I thought you could only slam a door. You could slam your opinion against it.
Yes.
How do you slam opinions?
I'm going to bring something funny. I'm going to bring something funny tomorrow. There's a magazine called The Oldie. It's a British magazine, and in that magazine they write lovely things about English and this and that. And there's in the pedant's corner, if you're pedantic about language, they've got some hilarious. There's one particular that you would then like what this fellow had to say. But I'll look up that for you. Yeah. Yes. University currently known as Rhodes, UCAR. Okay, I would say it as an acronym. Yeah, you wouldn't go say. I would still say it would be too long to say you see, all the way. I would call it a newly coined acronym. Yeah. Okay, so you wanted to ask something? Yes.
I can't help noticing, and it in fact annoys me, maybe it's wrong of me to be annoyed, that they use English terribly incorrectly, even in well-written books. For instance, the word whom has almost disappeared. The man who I spoke to.
Yeah. Well, see, they don't have any Latin training. They don't know about that.
And then there's this adding suffixes, and sometimes suffixes plus suffixes, to ordinary words, and using it constantly. I referred to something. No, he referenced something.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to find some examples of those. What I can say is this. Language does change. And we are the products of a certain era. We are the products of people who read the printed word and read, for your schooling, you had to read so many books and blah, 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 blah. We've got a new generation up and coming who unfortunately don't read as much. They will go and Google something to get the shortcut, I'll get the short version. And because it's about speed of things. I want it and I want it now. That's the millennial generation. I need it and I need it now. Some of it has got, of course, negative impact on language. My David Crystal, that I quote quite a lot, I love his stuff, a linguist. He defends this change of English. He defends the global English. He defends the explosion of acronyms and social media speak, as it were, saying it's not going to affect English at all. It's just a different variety of English, and it's something we have to accept. The problem becomes when they do start using it in written work, on the radio, on TV, and it does. That's the only part I disagree with him, because I teach students, and I can tell you right now, they cannot write in the same way because they don't read as much. So they are affected by the quick language, etc., etc. So that is a bit of a sadness for me. Yes.
Trump has been found using the word goodly as an adverb recently.
Well, look, let's give him some credit, because good is not an adverb. Well is the correct. That's the adverb. So he's trying to correct that and say goodly. He's trying. You wanted to ask some.
Related to that, I should say, adverb seems to have disappeared. You say, I did this happy.
It is very, very much so. Yeah.
Do you have a word for where common parlance is actually reversing the meaning of a word? Like, he's wicked smart. We had a crazy good time. We had a cool time at the beach.
Yeah. Whereas you're using two different, it's almost oxymoronic, isn't it? I had a crazy, crazy good time. That was pretty ugly. So that's kind of using oxymoron to either be satirical or just to emphasize a point. Yeah.
What's a noun for a person who does use oxymorons? What would we call it?
Can I use that? All right. So what I'm going to just start you on, so you can think about it, what we're going to enter tomorrow. I'm just so sorry we've only got 5 days, because we're not going to get through all the things I wanted to go through, but we're going to start off tomorrow with money. We're going to talk about words of Latin origin that come from money, and we'll hopefully get to move on to that, some other things as well. So there's an old Chinese proverb: with money you can buy a house, not a home, a clock, not time, a bed, not sleep, a book, not knowledge, a doctor, not good health, position, not respect, blood, not life, sex, not love. So a lovely proverb. So money, well, we know, was it always there? This notion of coinage or of paper money, or as we've moved on, we're becoming more and more a paperless money society. Let's just start with one slide and then we'll take some questions. Pecus means cattle. the word in Latin for money is pecunia. Can you make a connection? Yes. Okay, you can all make the connection. This is going to take you back to the ancient idea that I have this wealth and I will do something in exchange for, I need that from you. So it's the bartering system, which still exists, of course, certainly in Africa, bartering. I have this and okay. So pecunia, bartering with cattle. Later, this became, as the Roman Empire was expanding, it was when Rome itself was just a little agricultural city. It was easy to say, okay, I've got 3 cows, I'm going to take them along to market, and I'll tell you what, I'll give you a cow if you give me cabbages and onions for the whole year. That was fine. But when you've got now the movement out, the borders are out, you needed to have something that said, represented what you were worth. So they brought in blocks of bronze cast with the figure of a cow to indicate the value. I've got this. Okay, perfect. I mean, even today, with the lobola system, some with lobola where the father has to, of the bride, no, the groom has to pay the father of the bride something. They still, some in the rural communities will still look at cattle, heads of cattle. But now they put a monetary sum, or have you got a house for my daughter? Have you got this for my daughter? But there's got to be that value system. So I leave you with that, thinking about money and all the words associated with money. And we'll come back tomorrow. Reluctantly, and the men came back and became the boss once again, and they were secretaries and answering and blah, 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 blah. So it's developed this idea, the men wanting their position back. And that came in, although it came in post-World War, it was accepted in the dictionary in 1952. Okay, so somewhat after, but we know it takes some time for words to come into the dictionary.
Could it not be defined as the opposite of female chauvinism?
Well, in fact, there is female chauvinism as well. Obviously, I wanted to protect us ladies about that. But there is in the dictionary as well, there's female chauvinism. So same story, okay? Excessive belief in one's superiority. Yes, David?
Is there a female version of misogyny? Women that hate men?
Yes, misandrist. A misandrist, so misogynist is from misos, meaning hatred or intense dislike. Gyne or gune is woman, so an intense dislike of women. So there is the opposite, misos, with aner andros. Andros is a male, so somebody who intensely dislikes males. Okay, yeah. So let's look at, what did you find about boycott? We know what it means to refuse to have dealings with either commercially or socially, but where does it come from? Yes? Correct. That's absolutely succinct. Captain Charles Boycott was a land agent, not the owner of the land, but when there was the land reforms were being instituted, he refused to abide by these land reforms that said you have to lower the rents for your tenant farmers. He said, no way, I'm not going to do that. No. So they simply banded together, the tenant farmers, and said, well, we're not going to give you the milk, the bread, the blah, 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 blah. And they boycotted him. They ostracized him. And says, where are you? Well, you're all Shakespearean. You love Shakespeare, don't you? Eponym, named after? Thomas Baudelaire. Why? Why?
Because he thought it wasn't nice for families to read.
Correct. So what does it mean to Baudelairize something? To expurgate, to take out what they consider offensive pieces. But of course, what was left when he'd watered down Shakespeare was not acceptable at all. Okay. Alrighty. So we can carry on. We looked yesterday at eponyms. George Bush. Oh, gentleman told me an hilarious thing now this morning about another Bushism. He said, okay, I hope I've got it right. I can't see. Hand up, the gentleman. Okay. He said, his aides came to George Bush and said there's been a terrible earthquake in South America. And so many Brazilians were lost. And George Bush said, how much is a Brazilian? Okay. All right. So let's have a look first at chauvinism. I'm looking at boycott first, okay? Maybe I've missed out. Where's old Chauvin? Let's look at Chauvin first, Nicholas. Go back again. Where is he? He came first, so maybe I didn't put him. No. I put him first. So let's talk about chauvinism, even if he's not on my PowerPoint. Never mind. Who would like to offer a little bit about this word that we hear bandied around so much? We talk about male chauvinist and so on. Where did this come from? What is it? What did it originally mean? Which it can still mean today. You're all too shy. You are right. Yes. Napoleon's era.
And he travelled a lot to England from France. Was he an ambassador or something?
No. Oh, no.
He was a soldier and he was super patriotic. Only France could do anything.
God, it sounds familiar. Yes, exactly. So Nicolas Chauvin was a veteran of the Napoleonic army. He was badly wounded during that war, but he was absolutely crazily in love with Napoleon. Even when Napoleon abdicated, no, this is his guy. And so it came to mean excessive patriotism, but to a ridiculous extent that there was even a play that was written about him, mocking him really for that. So we don't tend to use it so much in that sense now. We use it in male chauvinism. What does male chauvinism mean? I like the way you think the male's always wrong. I heard wrong, didn't I? The male's always wrong? Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. Male chauvinism, about the male belief for some people that in the superiority of males over females. And where it evolved was from, of course, Nicolas Chauvin, who was so excessively patriotic, believed his country, France, France for the French only, and that sort of thing. After the war, when the men who'd gone to war came back, they expected that actually they could just get their jobs back. They'd left their jobs. But what had happened in the meantime was the women had actually gone into those jobs. Women even learned to be car mechanics, all sorts of things. And so when they came back, they were rather peeved that the women could do what they could do. That's the one very favorable, sort of common explanation. The other one says that actually when they came back, the women relinquished their positions.
And he sent his little seeds off back to France.
You naughty fella. Naughty fella. Okay. On the basis that this was just something lovely new, and they're not realizing the sort of harmful things that this oily substance had. Jean Nicot, Portuguese ambassador French ambassador to Portugal, and he introduced this substance. The Nicotiana you're talking about is the genus. When we talk a little bit later about Carl von Linné, we'll talk about that. That's the grouping, the genus. ADHD, let's see. Initialism, okay, attention deficit, hyperactive disorder. Okay. NASA, meaning she loves stars and things. NASA, National Aeronautic and Space Administration. That's it. Agency. I should know that. My stepson works there. Oh my. Mea culpa. UCT. Initialism. We don't say ACT, we say UCT. Initialism. CIA. Yes, also initialism. Central Intelligence Agency. Goodbye. God be with you. Correct. It is a blend. You look originally, it's God be with ye. And it's blended, a little bit of corruption over time, but it is a nice thing to say to somebody. God be with you. Rugby. I can see there must be some rugby fans here. Definitely. Rugby. Who's going to tell me about rugby? Toponym, correct. We didn't get to toponyms yesterday. We're going to look at them today. But it's the name of a place. Where's the place? England. It's a school in England where that game was first evolved. Okay. Bowdlerize. Where's my Shakespearean lady who just is? She sees Shakespeare in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwean economy. You go out for dinner and they give you on the menu jumbo shrimp. Well, is it a shrimp or is it jumbo? And my worst, these reality TV shows. Now, virtual reality, there's nothing real about it. They're walking around with these things, you know, microphones, cameras. So Kardashians, no. Okay, I think I've answered all the things that people were asking. Let's have a look at the homework. Homework, a great example, of course, of a compound. Home is one thing, work is one thing. You put them together and it's something different. That's what a compound's about. So let's start. Who would like to tell me about mob? Don't be shy.
The shortened version of the full word.
Yes, which is? Okay, who found what it is short for? Mobile vulgus. Mobile vulgus, which means the moving or the excitable crowd. We talk about our mobile phone. Mobile, mobile. It's moving. You take it around with you. It's a great name for a phone that is a cellular thing that stands alone. So mobile vulgus, the excitable crowd, and it just became too much of a phrase to carry around. So they clipped off the vulgus, then they clipped off the ile. So we accept in the dictionary the word mob, but when you looked at the etymology, you know. Mainframe, what would you say mainframe is? Compound, yes. So again, a word that's been created because of technology. We talk about mainframe computers, that you need names, labels for all these things. Nicotine. Okay, who's going to offer? Yes. Who said yes, eponym?
Yeah, well, originally Nicotiana, which was a Portuguese, was it French or Portuguese? Can't remember. French. But back to the hence botanical, because Jean Nicot